What is up, Motionators? Pastor Aaron here, and I was just praying for you and for Motion, and just asking the Lord to kind of reveal Himself and what He would have for us this coming week, and what He really gave me was the story of the woman who had the bleeding problem, and so he kind of used that story to speak to me about what our purpose is and what our goal is, because as a church, we exist as a community of believers to impact the lives of other people. That's why we do what we do. That's why we meet on Sunday mornings. That's why we grow in the likeness of Christ, so that other people can see our good works and praise the Lord, so that other people can see the hope that we have for living, so that other people, there's always a so that for other people. And as I was praying for Easter, the Lord just gave me this story, and it's found in Mark chapter 5, starting in verse 24. It says, "And a great crowd followed him and thronged about him. And there was a woman who had had a discharge of blood for 12 years, and who had suffered much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had. And she was no better off, but rather growing worse. She had heard the reports about Jesus, and came up behind him in a crowd and touched his garments. For she said, 'If I touch even his garments, I will be made well.' And immediately the flow of blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out from him, immediately turned around and asked, 'Who touched my garments?' And his disciples said to him, 'You see the crowd pressing around you, and you ask, who touched you?' And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, and fell down before him, and told him the whole truth. And Jesus said to her, 'Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease.'" Now, the picture that the Lord gave me using this story was this idea that this young woman represents so many people that live in our communities. How many people do you know that have tried to find value in what the world offers, to try and find hope in what the world offers, to try and find meaning, significance, love, respect, value? How many people do you know that have experienced what this young woman went through prior to her touching the garment of Jesus? She went to many physicians. She spent everything she had on the world's answers. And yet, the one who could answer her was right in front of her. And she didn't even need to touch Jesus. She just needed to touch his garment. And so what Jesus kind of showed me was the fact that Jesus' garment is kind of like going to church on Easter. We tend to kind of look down upon people who only come to church on Easter, and we're like, what in the, they just come to Easter and they just come to Christmas, and so they're not really Christians, they're not, but absolutely, like, that's all the faith that they can muster up. They do not believe this Jesus thing works. And the extent of their faith, all the faith they have is worked up to come to church on Easter. And I want to tell you, every single person who comes to church on Easter is expecting or desires Christ to do something in their lives. There's some sort of need, some sort of desire, some sort of ailment, some sort of brokenness that needs to be healed, and they are hoping that this is the year that it's going to be healed. Otherwise, they wouldn't come. There wouldn't be any hope left within them, and they wouldn't come on Christmas. They wouldn't come on Easter. So, Motionators, how this works, or what this means for us, as people who are totally bought into growing God's kingdom and saying that we want to make an eternal impact, a lasting significance in this world, we must invite the people that we know that are like this young woman. Who is waiting? Who do you know is waiting for somebody to invite them to church? Who do you know? Who do you have influence over? Who can you leverage your influence over to show them where Jesus is, to show them how to touch Jesus' garment? Who do you know that has given up on everything the world has to offer? Those are the people we need to go after. Those are the people that we need to love on in our church. Because I guarantee you, church, listen to me. This young woman will be at Motion Church this week. She will be. She'll be there. So let's begin praying now as a faith community. Let's begin praying now for the young men and the young women, the old women, the old men, whoever this woman represents. Let's begin praying now that they would experience the healing power of Jesus, not only this week at Motion Church, but every week at Motion Church. Listen, I'm super psyched